All right, hello, welcome everybody to your Nurse Your Wealth podcast number 6. We are back again. We had to take a little week off. We had some little babies that weren't feeling too well, so we had to take care of them
Yeah.
for this week. I don't know what's going on. I feel like it's just all the little kids got sick all in the same week. My nephew got sick. My good friend's kid was sick, and then Naseema's baby wasn't doing too well. But we are back this week, and we have a really, really good question for you, I think. So, welcome, Naseema. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. My kids are on the mend. They're better, actually 100% better.
Okay.
So I'm doing great. Yeah.
Good. That is great to hear.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to jump into a question that was submitted by one of Naseema's followers, I guess you could say, by email. And I think it's a really good question. And if you are a newer nurse that is just getting into your first job and dealing with things like managing student loans versus, looking at your 401k and maybe still in school, this is going to be for you because this question aligns with all of that right there. So what we're going to do today is actually pull this up so that everybody can see. And I'm going to do what I'm supposed to normally do, which is give my disclosures as well. So, for those that don't know, I am a certified financial planner. I have a lot of compliance that I have to stay within. So I have to let everybody know that what we talk about here should not be seen as financial advice, legal advice, tax advice. And, in all honesty, this should be looked at as entertainment, right? So, but I think this is a good situation that can be really helpful for people. And so I want you to know that please don't hold me accountable for this if you don't agree or you think something's wrong. But we're going to do our best to lay this out in a way that is very clear, so that if you're a newer nurse, it'll be helpful to you. So let's jump over to the question here. Okay, so I'm going to read this off. So the email that was sent to Naseema said, "Hey, I randomly landed on your site and is just receiving their 401k package in the mail from her first job as an RN. She's also just starting her BSN. So for those that, this is for nurses, so you probably know exactly what this is, but I'm guessing that's Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
Yes.
And adding to those student loans. So that tells me that she currently has student loans and she
Hmm.
is looking at adding to continue her degree because that's very important that we're going to talk about here.
Yes.
I have no idea how to even begin to know what it is I should choose when it comes to my 401k options. I am terrified about all these loans, and there's so much to talk. There's so much talk about nurses doing different things, but I don't know where to start. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
this is like a private person that I'm emailing or a huge corporation, but I figured I'd give it a shot because I'm lost. Feel free to email back anytime. Thanks, Caitlin. So, do you remember your first job as a nurse when you're getting out of school and dealing with some of this stuff?
I definitely remember it. And it was very overwhelming. I mean, it would be even more overwhelming if it was like my very first like corporate job. But yeah, just coming into nursing and all the things that you have to do as far as orientation is like nothing else. And so to get a package on top of that with all these options on how to invest in investing is something that you've never thought about is pretty intimidating. Yeah, and I do remember that feeling.
Yeah, most people when it comes to their first job, I mean, at least most nurses I know, a lot of times they're the first person to ever even have a 401k in their family sometimes. And that was like for us too. My parents were in the restaurant business, they owned their own business, so it was like there's no 401ks really in restaurants. It's kind of like
Right.
you got to figure things out on your own. So so let's start at the top with this thing.
Yes.
The first thing is that she is starting her BSN and adding to her student loans. Okay,
Yeah.
and she's worried about her 401k. So in all honesty, I don't think 401k is going to be a priority for me. Or if I was advising this person, if she's currently has student loans and is considering adding more to her student loans, I don't know if I'd even be thinking
Right.
about that. To be honest with you. Um, if you get a match, okay, that's one thing, but there's a couple things we don't know. One is
Yes.
how much in current student loans this person has. Okay, so
Yep.
I have no idea. I mean, my guess is probably $30,000. If they're still going for their BSN, I mean, is that even? I mean, is that in the range of what it possibly could be? I mean, I couldn't imagine it'd be much more than that.
Uh, it can be anywhere from like lower teens to six figures. So it just depends on what kind of program they're in,
Okay.
honestly. Yeah.
Okay. So, from a structural standpoint, right? There is something that I think if you're still dealing with debt, right? Dealing with debt kind of changes a lot for me when it comes to thinking about your long-term future because student loan rates have gone up. I don't know what they are today, but they're probably somewhere between 5 to 7% for federal
Closer to
loans.
7.
What's that?
Mm-hmm. Closer to 7.
7. Okay. And
Yeah.
then private loans are probably in the 10% plus range is my guess. That's the most recent thing I've seen. Is that what you're
That's
seeing?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you look at the long-term history of things like the stock market and 401ks, this is really hard because people might look at 2019 and say, well, in 2019 the S&P 500 did like over 20%, right? Did like 27%. So shouldn't I be investing in the market instead of paying down student loans at 7% or 10%? And 2019 was a great year, but 2018 you could have been down at the end of the year 10% or even more, depending on how you were invested. So, a reasonable return, I think, over the long term for something like your 401k, depending on your how aggressively you're invested, is somewhere between 7 to 10%.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're going to get maybe 7 to 10%, there's no guarantees there versus looking off paying off loans that is a guaranteed 7% or is a guaranteed 10% return. I'm probably going to recommend Kaylin really starts thinking about first doing everything she can to not take on additional student loans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So she already has her loans that she already has. This kind of is what it is. But
Yes.
I would love for Kaylin to start by looking at her budget, okay? Starting with okay, how much is your salary? What are you going to be taking home from that salary, not including 401k? And you really want to be smart and look at what you're going to be thinking about paying for taxes because
Yes.
this is a big thing Naseema shared with me. It was like nurses are getting through their first year and then getting kind of bigger pay than expected, and then they owe a bunch of taxes, and now they're getting the tax debt. So that's my number one thing is I want you to do some tax projections and there's online calculators you can use. If you have somebody that's been filing your taxes, it might be worth paying them, for an hour of their time to sit there and help you figure this out. But, once you figure out what your take home pay is going to be and then how much your basic expenses are going to cost, I would want to know what the gap is between what you have left over and what you're going to have to pay for school as you're completing your BSN. That's what I'd want to
Yes.
know first. Thoughts on that?
Yes. I want to reiterate what you said about paying off debt and that being um, an immediate return on your money and on your investment. And I don't think that people understand that. So I want to emphasize that that's guaranteed that you're going to get that rate of return. So instead of, investing in the market and hoping to get a certain rate of return, you automatically know that whatever your percentage rate that you're paying on your student loans, that's exactly the rate of return that you're going to get by paying down your debt. And so I think that that's very important. The other thing is that I want Kaylin to focus on not accumulating more debt, and she's going into a nursing job, and 99% of the nursing jobs I've seen will pay for tuition reimbursement. And so if that means maybe pausing for a semester and seeing if the next semester of her program can be covered by a loan, by the employer, she should do that. But there, oftentimes employers have affiliations with programs where I know at Kaiser, you can basically get your BSN for $100. So I would explore those options. And then I'm sure you're going to talk about looking at ways to pay down your debt now that you are employed, as far as like seeing if you can take advantage of public student loan forgiveness or anything like that. So we can talk about that later. But at this point, yeah, I 100% agree with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, going back to, let me just pull up Kaylin's situation here. What I want to do first for you, Kaylin, is reduce the chaos. Okay. You have
Yes.
a lot of things that you're looking at here. There's about 4 different things you're looking at. You're like, okay, I'm adding to student loans for my school. I'm thinking about paying down my debt. I have my 401k. And I'm considering like what I should be investing in from the start. So I want to break this down so this can be a lot more straightforward. So Caitlin, before you do anything, if you don't have some sort of emergency fund put aside, I don't want you to pay anything extra on your loans. I want you to get your budget in place and pay the minimums on your
Yeah.
loans currently until you get at least 1 month of expenses. Okay, so once you
Yeah.
figure out what your job, what your base expenses are, your rent, so let's say for example that's $3,000. That's pretty normal, 3 to 4 thousand bucks. I don't want you to do anything else until you save that 1 month of expenses, because having that money aside, while if you're going to school and working at the same time, you're going to be dealing with a lot of stress and
Yeah.
a lot of balancing act with things. And if you have like a car breakdown, or if you have anything going on and you don't have money to the side, the first thing you're probably going to do is go put that on a credit card. And so I want you to avoid that first. So, some gurus will say $1,000. I just don't think that's enough. I like 1 month of expenses to start. And they say about 64%. I've heard 72%, but at least 60 something percent of people don't even have $1,000 put aside for emergency in this country. Like everybody's living paycheck to paycheck, right? So if I can get you off of that statistic as your first goal and get 1 month of expenses aside, you're now in the top 25 or top 30% of people in this nation when it comes to handling your finances. So that's going to give you a little bit of power and a little bit of foundation that you have some flexibility if things come up. And then when it comes to your current student loans, there's a good chance these are subsidized, right? So the answer is going to change if you have subsidized loans versus unsubsidized loans. So for those that aren't familiar with that, subsidized loans, if Kaylin goes back in school and she's in school, let's say at least half time, I believe it is, but if not full time, she will qualify for the government essentially. If she has subsidized loans, they'll pay her interest on those loans while she's in school. So the loans will be there, but she won't accumulate interest. If her
Yeah.
loans are unsubsidized, then she's going to be accumulating interest. So
Right.
depending on what that situation is, I'd probably go a couple of different directions. But I think we're on the same page here, Naseema, that ideally we want to limit the amount of additional debt that she's going to take on. So
Yeah.
exploring things like reimbursement, tuition reimbursement programs through work. Go to your HR today and find out what sort of tuition reimbursement programs do you have. And if you have to be there for 3 months or 6 months before you get that, then maybe it might be good to take a semester off, just work, get some things in order before you go back. Because why take on $5, 10, or $15,000 if you
Mhm.
can just pause for a second, get your 1 month of expenses in place, and start getting ready for going back to school and having your finances in order. Those are my initial thoughts. Anything you want to add on that?
Nope, that's great.
Okay. So notice, Kaylin, how we haven't talked anything about your 401k yet, right? So your step number one is to get at least 1 month of expenses in place. Okay. Once you get that in place, then you want to figure out how much additional debt you're going to have to take on, and how much you can cash flow between your current income and what the school is going to cost. Ideally, be zero. And this is not something you brought up, so you didn't tell us that your workplace doesn't offer this. So in
Right.
Naseem's experience, like you said, over 90% are probably going to have some sort of reimbursement. So your number two goal is to go to visit with HR, see how much you can get reimbursed, and see, can you cash flow the rest of your degree without
Uh,
taking on additional debt. That's what I would say is step two. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree.
Okay. So, okay, let's say this is a perfect scenario. Okay. Let's say all her loans are subsidized loans, so she will not have to take on any interest between now and then.
Hmm.
And she can now get the majority of her education covered through work. So now we know she can cash flow the rest of her school without taking on any additional debt. Let's say it's a perfect scenario like that, because it sounds like that's a reasonable assumption. Maybe it's not perfect,
Very.
but it sounds reasonable. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
if that's the case and her employer offers a match, okay, so in your 401k, most employers are going to offer some sort of match, and maybe it's dollar for dollar up to 3% or 5%, or maybe you put 5% and they put in 2.5%, whatever that is. Okay. If you have the perfect scenario and you have subsidized loans, so you're not taking on any interest, and your workplace is now going to cover most of your future education, and you can cover the difference. If those two things are in place, then I'm going to tell you get the match. Okay, and
Yeah.
get that match there. And after you get that match, then I want you to take your 1 month of expenses up to 3 months of expenses with anything additional. Okay. So now ideally you're not taking on additional debt. you have a 1 month expenses in place, and you are getting the match now at work. Okay, so that's free money. I mean, ideally you want to get that match if you can. After that, then I want you to get to 3 months as a minimum of your expenses, not of your income. Okay, just what your expenses are for you to live, and get that into a high interest savings account. You can look at online accounts like a lot of places have now at least 1.8% or so. Ally, Betterment, there's a lot of those out there. You can get a high interest savings account there. So get that in a higher interest savings account somewhere it's not easily touchable, and put that aside. Then once you get that, then I want you to go back and take care of your original student loans before you do any additional investing, because those are going to come up at some point. You're going to have to deal with that at some point. So I'd rather have to deal with them now, where you're used to being a broke student, and just get those out of your life. Because if you can do these three things, then by the time that's done, and ideally you'll be out of school at that point, then you can go full speed when it comes to your 401k. Those are my kind of first few steps I would go. What are your thoughts on that, Naseema?
I agree. I love that. I love that methodology, and I feel like it's very clear. And people are like, "Okay, now I got this handled." And I think it unfogs the situation for her, because it's clear that she is very confused and is in like a state of kind of cloudiness, and that drives inaction. And I like this plan because it's very action oriented, but it's very simple to understand. The one thing I do want to ask you, so you said invest up to the match, right after you have that 1 month of expenses. But what should she be investing in?
So this is a good question.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing Kaylin's young. Okay, so it sounds like she's got her first job. Maybe she's a career changer, but
Yes,
she's probably less than
yes.
40. That's probably a reasonable assumption.
I think that's a reasonable
Okay,
assumption.
yeah. If you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, what's most important is actually your contribution rate, not necessarily what you invest in. Okay, so most 401ks are going to have a target date option. If you're just getting started, the name of my business is Keep It Simple, right? Keep It Simple Financial Planning. I think the best thing you can do is keep it simple and just pick a target date fund that matches the age that you'll be at 65. And generally it'll say, let's say, you're 30 today, it's 2020, so let's add 35 years on that. So it'd be a 2055 fund, right? Am I doing the math right on that?
Yes.
um, that's just the easiest way to get started. Most target
Yes.
date funds are reasonably low cost. They're very easy to get started. You just pick one fund and just dump money in, and until you get to at least 50,000 bucks. I mean, I think that's a reasonable place to start. And I don't think you need to be fancy, because those funds are going to do everything you need them to do for you, and you don't have to stress out about it. You just pick one fund, dump your money in there. That's what I would say if you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s.
So typically when we sign up for our 401ks, they kind of have like, um, when you're choosing your investments, they kind of have like this risk tolerance um, quiz that you're going to have to go through
Yeah.
that kind of determines your allocation. Um, do you see that often, or do you just see that they just set you up based on when they assume you're going to retire?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's both, but the problem with
Yeah.
with a lot of these 401k ones, and even like the online robo investor betterment types of ones, they're age
Hmm.
based. They're heavily age based,
Hmm.
and they're not like when I'm working with a client to do that, that's one tool we're going to use. But I'm
Yeah.
also going to look at what their goals are, what their return needs are, how much time they have, and then walking them through the history of what's happened in the worst market downturns. So I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But for most people, the idea with your 401k is you just put money in there, never look at it. Just maybe
Yep.
check it once a year or something like that, but like never look at it, never mess with it. The majority of millionaires and multimillionaires that I work with that are retiring today, that's mostly what they did. 10 to 15% in their 401k. A ton of them just picked a target date fund, called it a day, and they ended up with 800,000, $1 million, $2 million, depending on how much they contributed, and that's all they ever did. When you go to take
Right.
money out of your 401k, then you have to get a lot more technical, I think, on for distributions. But at 20 or 30, again, until you start hitting like 50,000 at least, or 100,000, then you could probably start getting a little more fancy with things. But if you're just getting started today, I want Caitlin to keep things as simple as possible. And if she just picks somewhere between, 55, when she would be 55 and 65, just pick the date. There's going to be like 2040, 2045, 2050, 2055. Almost every 401k I've seen or 403b has those funds in them. And generally, you're better off just picking that versus trying to pick your allocation when you're putting in, a couple $100 a week. It's just not going to be life changing. It's more about contribution rate at that point.
Exactly. I
Yep.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think she has some steps first, so it doesn't sound like, let me just go back to our question here. So, yeah, she's just starting her BSN. So, and we know she has student loans currently. We don't know how much. She has no idea how to begin, what she should choose when it comes to 401k. So, Kaylin, until you get 1 month of expenses, and you figure out, can you cash flow the rest of your nursing program, I don't even want you looking at your 401k yet. It's not going to be a better return. Most
Yeah.
likely, not at least you can't guarantee that much return. Okay, you can't guarantee 7 to 10% in your 401k. So I want you to pay for the rest of your school with as much money as you can possible. When you tell me so the next thing she says is, I am terrified about all these loans, and there's so much talk about nurses doing different things, and I don't know where to start. So let's go back to what you mentioned here, the risk tolerance questionnaire.
Yeah.
If someone has fear of these loans, we can talk about investments all day, but if she's going to be losing sleep every single night, that stress and that, those thoughts going through her head are going to be keeping her, like you said, away from making clear decisions that are as logical as possible, because you're looking at student loan and you're looking at this debt on your back. So this is why I
Yeah.
want you to focus on not taking on more and getting rid of this debt before you really start investing, because once you get this stuff paid off, you're probably going to be able to put thousands of dollars per month, because at that point you'll be into your nursing career, you have a few years of experience, and you'll probably have enough to start, doing big damage when it comes to investing for the long term. But if you have
Yeah.
this fear and hesitation, you're not going to take career risks. You're not going to quit the job you're at for a better job because you're scared of this student loan payment coming in. I see this all the time. This is why I want you to have at least 1 month, and I want you to get the 3 months, right? Or maybe even 6, but at least 3 months, because if you're not happy at the job that you're in and you have no money and you have debt you got to pay and you got bills, maybe you have kids you got to cover, you're going to be stuck in this job, not, doing everything you can to advance your career because you're living in fear, versus being confident and having that power of saying, I got money in the bank. I don't give a F about what you're saying to me. I'm not happy here. I'm going to move on, because even if I don't have a job for 2 or 3 months, I'm going to be fine. I want you to have that power to do that, because so many young people don't have that, but the ones that do, those are the ones that actually advance their careers a lot faster, because they can make those power moves. They can move across the country. They can move to another city and not worry about it, because they have that money to cover themselves in between. That's why I want you to develop that.
I love that, Jason. And I really, it's too many nurses that don't have the opportunity to speak up for things that aren't right, to
Mm,
leave a toxic work environment
mm-hmm.
because they are bound to these jobs because of debt. And just even if you have debt, but you have that security of having those savings, I feel like it enables you to be a better nurse overall. It decreases your chances of burnout and all those things. So I'm so happy you brought that up, because that is a serious problem in our career. And I feel like you don't have to have it all figured out financially to be able to be the best nurse possible. But if you do have that cushion, you know that you can be the patient advocate that you need to be, and you can speak up for yourself and make decisions that are going to serve you better if you are not stressed about money.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
huge. Because I
Yeah.
think we've all been in the toxic work environment before. And I was there. I had
Yeah.
$28,000 of student debt that I had to pay off when I got out of school. Did I have to take that? No, I was stupid and party too much. And, I could have, I worked the whole time and I made good money, but I took those on anyways. I just had no financial education. I was not financially literate at that point. No one ever taught me, right? So I had to learn this stuff. So I'm hoping that, with the internet now, there's just so much available information, people start taking this on. But the ability to say, I don't need this job. I can go find another job, and I'm going to get out of this sick, twisted, toxic environment that everyone around me is just negative. That's going to deliver you so much better returns over time, because you staying in a positive mental state and being able to have that choice, that's going to give you just this confidence in this. You're going to have this energy and light around you that when you go into the next job, they're going to see that and know that, say, this person's different. And I do believe that the debt system is meant to keep people trapped in jobs
Yeah.
that they don't like, that they're not
Yeah.
happy in. I really do think that that's the case. And so, this whole college game, I mean, to be a nurse, to be a CFP, like I do, you do have to get a college degree. But the next 10 or 20 years, I think we're going to be seeing a big shift in that environment. I think the colleges are in big trouble. And people are waking up to this stuff because if you're stuck in debt and you're trapped, you really have less options. And I think people are waking up saying, hey, this doesn't make a lot of sense. The payoff isn't there like I thought it would be. In nursing, I think it is still. Medical field still is. But in a lot of fields, especially like the humanities, and social sciences, it's just not there. The return on investment is just not there, and it's kind of a bad deal. So shall we recap and wrap this one up here for Miss Kaylin?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So Miss Kaylin, your step number one is sit down and write your budget out. Okay. When you get your first paycheck, look how much you're taking home. Okay. Figure out how much you have taking home, and then write out all your expenses and look at, is there a gap between what you're taking home and what you bring in right here. So whatever this gap is, your first goal with that gap is to figure out, once you figure out your 1 month of expenses, get that money aside, pay the minimums on everything else until you get 1 month of expenses put away in a savings account. That is sacred money. You do not touch that money unless it is an absolute emergency. Okay. Number two, look at your student loans. Are they subsidized or unsubsidized? If they're subsidized and you're not going to be paying any interest on your current loans, then for sure the next question is, how can you pay as much as possible towards the finishing your degree here? Okay. Along with that is visiting human resources and seeing, is there a tuition reimbursement program, and figuring out what that is and how much they can reimburse you for. If you can get all of your school paid for, then wonderful. Now we're going to go back and finish off the school loans that you have, and get those done. And then we're going to save about 3 months of expenses. And then we can talk about investing in your 401k. That'd be your game plan for me, for you, if you were coming to me and asking me what you should do in this situation. And everything matches what we said essentially. So, thoughts?
I think it's solid advice. I love it. And I think, like I said, it takes a lot of the indecision and a lot of the fear behind, the fear is apparent in that question. And fear paralyzes people. And I feel like this is the perfect time. And I'm really commending you for asking the question, because this is the perfect time to make a valuable decision that is going to affect you for the rest of your life. I wish I had have known this information as a new grad, and it would have totally changed my financial trajectory. So I commend you for asking the question. I think that this plan is solid, and I hope that you follow it and know that if you do and if you get this piece right, so much of your other financial life will be so much easier. And so, excellent advice, Jason. I love it.
Cool. So I'm going to throw up this link here to your site, that if anybody has a question and they would like us to answer that, they can go to nursesonfirepodcast.com/ask. Once again, that's nursesonfirepodcast.com/ask. And we love your questions. The more detail you can give us, the better. Like, we didn't know how much student loans Kaylin had. So some things that we had to make some assumptions on. So if you want to give us a full breakdown of your situation, that'd be really helpful. And that's the better way we can guide you. So that's what we have for you today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next one. All right. Have a good day.
Bye.